welcome back to my channel. So today is part 2 of my book haul. These are all books that I have gotten since December, so in the last like three and a half months. Part 1, which I will link up above if you haven't seen it, was all of the romance books, and so this is everything else. I have a very big stack here of all of my used book finds. You guys know primarily I like to try to buy my books used or discounted, and I found a lot of great stuff the past couple of months. I also have just a few books that I had pre-ordered, as well as some books that were sent to me. So we'll start with those. First was a gift from Megan from Meg with Books, and that is And the Trees Crept In. This is a YA horror that a lot of people have recommended to me. I can't remember exactly what the context was, but there was a book that I had read and loved, and a bunch of people in the comments of whatever video I talked about it said that if I liked that book, I would like this book. I cannot remember what the book was, so if you guys who recommended this to me are watching, please remind me. But this sounds really cool. It's about these girls who are going to stay at their aunt's like creepy home, and it seems like it's haunted. It says, ever since they arrived, the trees have been creeping closer. Who is the beautiful boy who appeared from the woods? And who is the tall man with no eyes who Nori plays with in the basement at night? But the cool thing about this book is that there's like mixed media inside. So there's like journal entries, letters. It just looks very creepy. So I'm very excited to read this. And then the next stack are all arcs. So the first one has already come out. It is Servant Mage by Kate Elliott, and I believe that this is a queer fantasy novella with magic and dragons. It says that it's about a low-level mage with the ability to create and sustain light. She's caught up in a conspiracy to kill the royal baby. Sounds really cool. The next one comes out in May, and that is Burn Down, Rise Up by Vincent Triato. This is a YA horror. This sounds so cool. It is a horror game. So it takes place in the Bronx, and kids are going missing, and these two girls team up to investigate, but they discover that everything is tied to this urban legend called the Echo Game, which it says that it is a game that is rumored to trap people in a sinister world underneath the city. Like, what? That sounds so cool. Definitely gives me like Stranger Things, like the Upside Down vibes, but it's also a game. Very excited to read this. Then we have Wild and Wicked Things by Francesca May. This is a sapphic fantasy that I believe is inspired by The Great Gatsby. It takes place in the 1920s at this place called Crow Island, where people whisper that real magic lurks. And the main character arrives at Crow Island to reunite with her best friend. But while she's there, she witnesses magic and is lured into this very magical, glamorous world where boundaries of wickedness are tested and the cost of illicit magic might be death. And then the last arc that I have here comes out also in May, and that is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. And this is an Arab-inspired epic fantasy story. Hold on, I gotta look this up. There's no synopsis on the arc. Okay, yeah, so this is following a woman who is a criminal. With the help of her djinn bodyguard, she hunts and sells illegal magic. It weaves the tale of a legendary smuggler, a cowardly prince, and a dangerous quest across the desert to find a legendary magical lamp. Also, I want to apologize if you guys can hear people in the background. My apartment faces the pool, and now that it's summer, there's going to be either music or children's voices in the background of like the majority of my videos, and there's nothing that I can do about it, so I'm sorry. Okay, so then I have 3 books here that I had pre-ordered. The first one is Finlay Donovan Knocks 'Em Dead by Elle Cosimano. This is a sequel to Finlay Donovan Is Killing It, which I read and I loved it, and I'm so excited to read the sequel. Basically, the series follows this woman who is recently divorced, and she's a writer, and one day she's in a Panera pitching her next crime fiction to her agent, and because of the way that she is talking, somebody overhears her and misunderstands and thinks that she is an assassin for hire and slips $50,000 into her bag with a note that says to kill her husband. And this leads Finlay into this world of crime. It is so funny, and I am so excited to read the sequel. I'm so glad that this is like a long series. The next book that I had pre-ordered is Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. This is a sci-fi horror about this woman who her job is to investigate distress signals in space, and she gets a distress call, and when she goes to investigate, she discovers this luxury spaceship that had disappeared 20 years ago, and now it has resurfaced, and there's maybe ghosts, it's maybe haunted. I've been so excited to read this. And then the last book that I had pre-ordered is Medusa by Jessie Burton. I've already read this. I loved it. This is a Medusa retelling. It's probably like the best Medusa book that I've read. It also has illustrations inside, and I absolutely love this. If you are a fan of Medusa, this is definitely a must read. It's not anything like revolutionary. It's not telling a different story. It's just, I think, giving Medusa the voice that she deserves. Okay. Now moving along to all of the used books that I got. Also, Sarah from Sarah Without an H asked me where Loki was recently. So here you go, Sarah. Here's some Loki content just for you. So I guess I'm just gonna jump around with all of these used books. A lot of these are just ones that I've seen people recommend to me and I didn't look that deep into. And since I found them for very cheap, I just purchased them. So the first one we have here is This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno. This is a horror book that a lot of people recommended to me because I mentioned I like books that are told in second person or books that are told as letters. I can't remember exactly which, but I believe that this one is a letter from a husband to his deceased wife. And that's literally all I know about it. I don't know what makes it horror, but this is one that I got a lot of recommendations for. Another one I got a lot of recommendations for is Moon of the Crusted Snow. I think that this is one people told me that since I liked Station 11, I would like this. It's kind of like a slower, quiet, more melancholy. It is this, I'm probably gonna butcher this, Anishinaabe community that goes dark. They're cut off from civilization, from power, and they have to figure out how to survive. Then we have a Becky Chambers book, and that is A Psalm for the Wild Built. I love Becky Chambers, but I have not read all of her books. She doesn't have that many, so it's going to be very easy for me to catch up with her releases, but this one is about robots that have become self-aware. I've heard mixed things about this, but I feel like that's kind of how it is with a lot of Becky Chambers books. Like, they're a very specific style that you either like or don't like. They're a lot like quieter and cozier. Then I have The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reed. This is on my TBR for this month and I'm very excited. It is a adult fantasy inspired by Hungarian history and Jewish mythology, which follows a young pagan woman with hidden powers and a one-eyed captain of the woodsmen as they form an unlikely alliance to thwart a tyrant. So then I have two Christina Henry books. I think that I now own every single one of her books, and there's just something about Christina Henry that, like, all of her plots and like all of her concepts just sound so freaking cool. So first we have The Ghost Tree. It's set in a small town where residents are going missing, and the only clue to their fate is one teenager's terrifying vision of a monster dragging the remains of the girls through the woods. Like, does that not just sound so cool? And then this other one, Horseman, is a Sleepy Hollow retelling. And I believe that the main character is trans. So eventually I'm gonna need to do like a Christina Henry binge. The one book that I have read from her, I absolutely loved. So I don't know why I've been putting the rest of her books off. Okay, then we have Ikisar Falcon by K.S. Veloso. This is the second book in the Chronicles of the Bitch Queen. I read book one back when it came out, and I've been meaning to pick up the sequel. I have the completed trilogy now, so I feel like this year is the time to do that. I absolutely loved book one. I do think that I would need to either reread book one or like find a recap to refresh my memory because it has been a while. But yeah, excited to have that completed trilogy now. Another sequel that I have is Along the Saltwise Sea by A. Deborah Baker. This is the sequel to over the woodward wall, which I loved, and I'm so excited that this is going to be a series. These are companions to Middle Game. They follow two kids who find this wall in the middle of the street and they climb over it and they end up in this magical world, and the only way out is to follow the brick road, but there's a lot of obstacles along the way, and it was just such a fun, like, whimsical story. Another sequel that I got is Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty. I still have not read The City of Brass. That is something that I want to do this year, so I have been trying to find the hardcovers that aren't extremely expensive. I still need to get book 3, and then maybe I will binge them. More books that were recommended to me. Follow Me to the Ground by Sue Rainsford. This is a horror book that I do not know what it is about. It was recommended to me a lot, so I kind of just bought it sight unseen. It says, a haunting story about an otherworldly young woman torn between her old way of life and the perilous delights of a new lover. I don't know, but this cover looks really weird and I love it. I've noticed that there's a trend with these, like, books that have a person with, like, flowers or nature coming out of them, and I love it. I love all those books. Then we have The End of Men by Christina Sweeney Baird. This, I think, is post-apocalyptic. It says it's set in a world where a virus stalks our male population in an electrifying debut that asks, what would life truly look like without men? Now I remember why I got this. The year is 2025 and a mysterious illness has broken out in Scotland. A lethal virus that seems to only affect men. Definitely gonna be interested to read this. It gives me, like, Why the Last Man vibes, which was a comic series that I really liked. The next one is Ring Shout by P. Djeli Clark. This is a horror book. I think that's like a play on the KKK. It says, in 1915, the birth of a nation casts a spell across America, swelling the Klan's ranks and drinking deep from the darkest thoughts of white folk. And then it's about a group of resistance fighters who hunt their hunters and send the Klan's demons straight to hell. I've read a couple other books by P. Djeli Clark and I really, really liked them. All of his books that I've read so far have like a twist, like a magical or sci-fi twist on history, and I really like that. Then we have When the Reckoning Comes by LaTanya McQueen. This is a horror book that is set at a wedding where the venue is a plantation that has now been turned into a resort. It says, for all its fancy renovations, the Woodman remains a monument to its oppressive racist history. The bar serves antebellum-themed drinks, entertainment includes horrifying reenactments, and the service staff is nearly all black. This kind of reminds me of, what's that movie that just came out recently? I think it was called Antebellum. I think that's what it was called. But it gives me that kind of vibe. I've heard mixed things about this book, but I'm very interested to see what it's all about. Okay, then we have Blood Countess by Lana Popovic. So this is a YA book about Countess Bathory, who was this actual, like, countess who, I believe she, like, killed girls so that she could bathe in their blood to, like, stay young and youthful. So this follows the main character, who is one of her maids, but I think that this is sapphic. The Countess begins to groom Anna as her friend, confidant, and eventual lover. But when others in her employ disappear, Anna begins to fear the person she's begun to love has crossed over into madness. Anna realizes she isn't the Countess's friend or lover, she's her prisoner. Does that not sound like something that I'm gonna love? The next book is A History of What Comes Next by Sylvian Neuvel. I've read like 3 books by this author and really enjoyed all of them. So this one is a sci-fi book. It's a darkly satirical first contact thriller as seen through the eyes of women who make progress possible and the men who are determined to stop them. Sounds very cool. Okay, we only have a couple left. The next one is The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. This is a historical fantasy that follows suffragists, but there's also witches, and it's following 3 sisters in New Salem who are all reconnecting and coming into their magical powers. The next one that we have is He Started It by Samantha Downing. I have read For Your Own Good and I really loved it. I think that Samantha Downing only has 3 books. For Your Own Good, My Lovely Wife, and this one. This one I believe is about a road trip about three, I think, siblings who are coming together after a long absence when their grandfather dies and leaves them a cryptic message that the siblings and their respective partners must come together for a cross-country road trip to fulfill his final wish in order to secure their inheritance. But they're all keeping secrets. One of them is a killer, and there's a body in the trunk. And then the last book that we have here is Sundial by Catriona Ward. I'm gonna be completely honest with you, this was 100% a cover buy. I am obsessed with this cover, but I'm also currently reading The Last House on Needless Street, which is also by Catriona Ward. Also, this book really reminds me of the book The Push by Ashley Audrain, which I read recently and loved. So this is about a mother and daughter, and the mom is starting to notice that her daughter is exhibiting some very strange behaviors. She collects tiny bones and whispers to imaginary friends. And it says that she sees a darkness in her daughter, one that reminds her too much of the family she left behind. So she decides to take her to her childhood home deep in the Mojave Desert. She fears only one of them will make it out alive. Just sounds so cool. So those were all of the books that I have bought in the past couple of months. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.